successful in the state for whatever reason.
Let me ask you in regards to challenges. If we have this problem with everything done, why are we building more subsidized housing? Do we bring people in who can't afford a house?
Actually, and this is what I had the same question you did when I first got here with this NSP2 program. Surprisingly enough, most of the people that are coming into that housing have 1.5 to 2 times the average income of Lake Worth. So they are actually raising the economic level of Lake Worth because they are allowed to have 60, some of them actually, some families can have up to $85,000 of household income and still qualify as lower income or are needy. So many of the people who came into the NSP2 program, they are considered wealthy by our economic standard. Which I was surprised, and I agree with you. I said we needed people who have money, and surprisingly, the lesser affluent are the ones who have money in Lake Worth.
Well, why are we subsidizing them?
That
If they have the money, it doesn't make sense.
well, it's based on county numbers in the federal government. The city doesn't really have that much money in them, except for the properties given the CRA. It's under the federal regulations stipulate that for the housing ownership, I think you can make 120% of the household median income, which gets you to about that $80,000 range. The people are committed, they sign covenants on the properties so that they can't sell them, make a bunch of money. And they have improved the tax base and improved the overall condition of the city. We need to work together to try to attract people who are above and beyond that, who can afford to buy a house that's not subsidized. And we're working toward that, but it's a long way to go.
Speak to that question. I have to sit on the Habitat for Humanity/UPB board, and we know that Habitat built like 30-some houses in the city of Lake Worth, and we're going to build about 12 more by the end of this year. And I can tell you from the application that comes through, like in December, we got over 200 applications for 12 homes that's going to be built this year. And it's a very thorough process. And those people are really hardworking, producing, making an income that is above that $24,000, because it's not a handout. They do have to pay for the houses. Except the way the program is structured, we do not, or I should say Habitat do not charge them an interest rate. They're paying back for the house, and they must stay in that house like for the same certain amount of time. So they're not really indigent. They're really producing citizens, and they are doing something for the city by moving those people into the community. Because what we find is that many people next door to those houses that they build are not working on social security, getting some sort of aid, and those are probably residents we want to work with. But the people that they're cutting in are not indigent people at all, and it's not a handout. It's a handout. We do have to pass quite some hurdles to actually get into that house. I sit on that board and I know it for a fact. Because in the beginning I thought, what are we doing here? The houses? They're not.
Let me just say this. You see a number of these subsidized houses you can buy, you see older stuff, furniture out in the weather. You see junk in their yard, you see weeds so high that you would get chiggers, all right?
Not Habitat houses.
Well, I don't know whose houses they are, but they're sure subsidized houses, somebody.
Well, and you get to a point that one reason why we made some new changes to our code, it's that part of what you're bringing up. There are a lot of property owners who have very poor property and they get a very high rent for them. Not high in comparison to Palm Beach County, but based on the quality of the home that they're renting or the space they're renting, they get a very, very high rent. When I arrived, the city had chosen to remove the minimum housing standard from our code. So you could legally live in a property with no water, no electric, no heat, no plumbing. Because I kept getting complaints from a number of you about the way people were living. And I'm digging in the code and there's got to be in here. No city doesn't have this. And I'm like, oh crap, we don't have that part of the code, so we put that back in. We made it a little stronger than the federal housing code. We have been doing some enforcement. We've gotten a number of what we would consider less than desirable landlords to improve their properties, but it's an uphill battle. Over 50% of the city is rental when it comes to housing. And we have over 1,000 to 1,500 active code cases at any one time. Fortunately, we're getting a much higher compliance rate, and I think that's because the economy is turning around and maybe there are some funds available to these people who have the properties. And there's been a lot of property turned over in the city, and we will not issue a business license to anybody to rent their property out until it has passed use and occupancy inspection. And we're just chipping away, but it's going to take a long time to make a real huge visible difference when probably 5,000 of the properties in the city are in trouble, and there are 2,000 foreclosures or abandoned properties out of 11,000 properties altogether.
Does the city have a lot of old houses that they bought up? Did the city buy up old houses?
The city has maybe 26 properties that they've gotten through some means of foreclosure or donated. They're all vacant lots except for one property, and that's a historic fourplex over on K and Fifth. The Preservation Board is dying for us to get in private hands, and I haven't been able to get it to the City Commission to do that, because they can't accept to do the rest of the properties. The CRA has bought numbers of properties out of foreclosure. We do feel that we will be foreclosing on some properties soon. The challenge with the properties that...
And you sell them on when you foreclose on them?
That's an interesting wrinkle. Florida statute requires that the city do what's called an accounting of their property and then identify which ones are surplus, which means with those properties, if we don't need something, our city charter requires they be looked at first for affordable housing, and if they are suitable for that, they are then donated to an entity that would do affordable housing, which rather be the Habitat for Humanity or the CRA or Adopt a Family or something like that. We've already determined that they have enough affordable housing, so the properties qualify for that. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get the City Commission to all agree on which properties should be surplus and how they should be surplus. There's two mechanisms in the code. One is by sealed bid and one is by request for proposal. We are making some changes to our code because one of the hurdles for it is that the code required that the minimum bids be 150% of what the tax value of the property was. And I've been arguing for 2 years, why would someone pay for property more than it's worth and net worth? We're having a hard enough time getting to buy it in the first place. So it should be at least no more than 100% of the tax value. And so we're bringing forward that change, I believe, next week. And then there'll be a surplus property proposal after that, hopefully to get those 20 properties off the city's hands. We have done an aggressive foreclosure process on code compliance. We've evaluated those that are older and which ones don't already have other interested parties through liens or mortgages or other foreclosure interests, and have sent letters to them. Our primary goal is to try to get to those people who maybe have not been in the code compliance loop for a while. They have a running lien or fines that they will owe. I do have a problem, maybe I should go about getting them to fix it. We provided a mechanism on how if you invest in the property, we'll give you credit for that toward your lien. And it's been very successful because our program is set up, the more you invest, the more you get off the lien. And many people have wiped out their liens and done remarkable transformations of the properties. They've not just done the very, very minimum. There are 75 foreclosures going forward next month, 75 next month, and 75 the following month. We probably will not foreclose on all those properties because we do not feel it's economically or financially prudent to foreclose on a property that at the end of the day, we're going to spend more money getting it than it's worth. The ones we can make money on, or at least break even, we will foreclose on.
And then what are you going to do with the property?
Then I'm hoping by that point the city will have actually approved our surplus property program, and we will be able to do it much faster to get the properties out of our hands and the private hands.
Because there's a lot of people looking to buy, to live in, little properties to renovate. Very, very hard. I speak to people every day that say, have you heard of anything? Because they want to buy a little house, a little 1 or 2 bedroom. They want to renovate it. They want to live in it. And they're renting at the moment. They're looking for something permanent. Or they might be holiday people that are here from Canada that are looking to buy a little property to come down for every summer. Every winter. And there's, you get online, you look around, there's not a lot of properties.
There's not. And there's a great number that are in a...
properties right now in the market. You're about 19,000, about 37,000 to about 100,000. So,
Because our chef's been looking too. He's been
Some of them.
looking.
Yeah, the other issue too, a lot of banks have stopped their foreclosure proceedings where they have a notice of foreclosure, have not completed the process, or abandoned the process altogether. And then at that time, it goes back to the original owner who nobody knows who that person is. They've been gone for years. And we've looking at trying to force, there was a legal action taken on a couple of properties in another municipality where the bank was forced to go ahead and foreclose. You just can't sit on this foreclosure notice and not take title and be responsible for the property. So there is a legal precedent. We're going to push forward on that through our vacant registry program, because we still have anywhere from 900 to 1,400 properties that are in some state of foreclosure, which is kind of hard to tell what state they're all in, because a lot of them are coming out very quickly. The banks have been turning properties that we have no sales, so that number keeps changing. There are more questions back over here.
I have a question, it was getting back to the utilities.
Uh-huh.
Is there something now on the books that forces owners to have electricity turned on? And if they don't, and there's a complaint filed, what would be the process? How long would it take to force that owner to live within the ordinance?
I love Glenn Torsivi's office, and they've done a lot of work for the city, but I've spent one semester in law school, and I knew I could never be a lawyer because they drive me crazy. The process is not as short as I would like. They are first given a notice, it's either to the property owner or could be a civil citation to the person having the property. They are given a certain number of days to comply, which is usually, in that case, a life safety issue would be 7 to 10 days. If they are not, then a formal notice of hearing is sent out and it's scheduled for the special magistrate the next month, which is the last Thursday of the month. The special magistrate and I don't necessarily agree, but she usually gives them more time to comply, even though they've already had, at that point, as much as 45 days to comply, which doesn't take very long to get electricity. She may give them 7 to 10 days more. If they don't, then it starts to fine. And in theory, until we foreclose or PBSO gets involved, they could live there without it. Now granted, the costs of all that which get attached to the property are significantly more than actually turning on electricity in the first place. So we dealt with one gentleman who ended up being, he was living in his sister's property illegally, thinking that it was his, and I think he may have been a little bit challenged mentally or emotionally, I'm not sure. And we finally got a hold of the sisters. There's someone living in your property. It is not abandoned and vacant, and this person is living there legally, and she did eventually take care of it. And a lot of our cases are like there are squatters living in property. We passed another new ordinance that if a property has been deemed abandoned or on our list and has been noticed for board and secure, if there are people trespassing on it, the sheriff's office can arrest them. Unfortunately, there's no little twist to that. They can do two things. They can give them a civil citation, which requires them to notice to appear, which requires them to go to court, or they can be actually physically arrested. In the more egregious cases where there's a real life safety issue or there's some another law that's been broken, we usually arrest them. Other ones, they will be given notice to appear. A lot of these people are homeless and they don't show up. The state attorney's office would like to charge each municipality for the court proceedings of the people that they send to that process. Lake Worth can't afford it, so I'm thinking rock and a hard place. So, you just have no idea how challenging this place is. We make 4 steps forward and then we get thrown 3 back. But we are making strides forward, and it's getting better. People are beginning to understand that we will, you're going to face some kind of legal issue, or if you are legally in a property. It may not be the full extent of the law because we can't afford to go through the whole process, but in the worst case, it could be as much as 120, 180 days.
I have one other question that came up last time, but also Mary, I just wanted to say that Mary wants 5 minutes of our time before the end of the meeting. So don't leave without Mary talking. We talked about signage. We had talked about signage on both Dixie and on Federal, that a lot of our businesses are hurting because of the signage regulations, and if people drive by and don't see big signs, they won't stop in at their businesses. And I wonder if you could just comment on signage before Mary talks.
a little unclear on what type of signage you're talking about. I mean, directional signage to get downtown, or?
No, signage for business signages, signs for businesses that announce that this business is here.
Well, every business is entitled to a sign. There is a percentage of area that can be attributed to a sign. But if your business is on Dave Street, you can't have a sign for your business over on Federal Highway. If we allowed that, can you imagine the city would be proliferated with sign litter? Part of the problem in Lake Worth is that there's so much signage here, you can't focus on it. If you go to other affluent communities, you drive along, everyone has a little single sign, you can read each one. Here, it's like it's an overload. And people drive faster. One of our goals is to try to get more landscaping and a far less signage on Dixie Highway so you can actually see the sign that you want to read. Because right now you can't. There's just too much going on.
Mr. Willis, in regards to, you've been to New York City and remember Times Square, give the city's definition of pornography or obscene material, and do we have any protection here at Lake Worth on our main part against that kind of operation?
In regard to signage or in regards to a business?
The operation.
Okay, due to what's called equal protection and reasonable accommodation, every city's land development regulations or zoning code must allow like a strip club somewhere in its city. We allow them under a conditional land use in the Park of Commerce only. To my knowledge, we do not have any of those type of businesses legally operating in the city. Though I know we have brothels and we have whorehouses and we have this and that we keep catching because PBSO keeps setting up stings. There's also provision of the code that prohibits certain kinds of language or depictions or symbols or pictures of a lot of things when it comes to advertising or signage. I will say part of it, the internet world and people's creativity has sort of exceeded how our definition works. The planning board tried to tackle that when we were doing the LDRs, and it got to be a legal quagmire, so we thought we'd come back to it later and try to relook at the definition of what pornography
You don't have
is.
a definition now?
We do. It includes a certain number of like depictions of certain body parts and actions and whatever, but
Do you enforce it?
we do enforce it as best we can. PBSO usually does because they're the ones who find out when things are happening. Like I said though, so it's politically correct, but certain things that happen now in society are not reflected in that pornography definition because it was done probably about 20 years ago. And there are things that have happened or now become prevalent that were not around at that point that do fall into something that people would find offensive.
Well, it could kill a city, that's why I asked.
Yeah. Ours is fairly stringent, and why it got big quagmire is like you have to provide some provision for certain things to happen under limited means, and we decided we would not dabble in that. Since ours is fairly strict in many respects, we just wait for the legal challenge rather than open up Pandora's box and then having something else as an unintended consequence.
Speaking of pornography, come see our Peeps show at the gallery.
Where is it?
15 South J Street.
I didn't know we had.
We have a Peep show there.
I don't think you're
bird
never,
show.
I don't think you can ever stamp out prostitution anywhere, but I was driving our barman home, giving him a lift home one night into the block of units that are on the corner of Dixie, and I think, I'm not sure which street, one of the streets coming down in the block of units, new ones. And I pulled up to let Mark out, and this female opens my back door. She's on the phone and she hops in my back door, in my back seat of the car. And I said, get out of my car, get out of my car. And Mark had to open the door and say, get out. And it was a hooker, thinking because I pulled up, she didn't see me, she just saw Mark. And so she hopped in my car.
May I ask that question? Did you call PBSO after that?
I didn't, I just said, get out of my car.
And that's where PBSO implores upon everybody. If you have an incident, even if it's innocuous.
If I'd been on my own, I'd been petrified.
Call them, because unless we all participate in trying to eradicate the problem, we say it's not my business, I can keep going, it's gonna proliferate. We've gotta have all of you involved and engaged.
And this is like 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock.
The best time to call people is I have nothing else better to do.
William, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can we get more of these for all of the other businesses, is that?
I can leave these, I'm still putting them together,
Okay.
they don't come like this, they come all separate, so we're putting them together as fast as
I
we
see you on the
can.
volunteer page back here, maybe get some volunteers to help you do that.
Yes, I've got 1,000 of these to put together.
I wanted to find out from Josh.
Thank you, William.
We're
Wanted to
not
say
getting
thank
anything for 4th of July.
Mary,
Mark wasn't, I mean, I didn't,
Like
when I was spoke
they do a
to,
fair and
I didn't,
stuff.
well, Mark's